Hey, Gene. How you doing?
Hey, John. You guys getting any snow?
No, not since a couple days
Sunday.
ago. Yeah,
Yeah, Sunday.
what in some areas what was there stuck around a little bit, in some of the shadows. But yeah, nothing since then. So,
We got stomped on. I
oh
was in
wow,
I have a Kubota four-wheel drive tractor with the plow on it, and I was in it for 8 hours doing my house, kids' houses, neighbors.
dang.
It was, I'm coming down tomorrow morning.
Oh, good deal. Yeah, I just saw your note too. It is not on today, but there's discussion
Okay.
about it to let you know that too. But yeah, I saw where they got a lot of it. The good news for us is I don't think it's going to get as cold as they thought it was here. I don't think in Utah in general, it looks like that colder air is going further east. And we don't have the single digits here. Not quite as bad, but um, yeah, I'm glad. I mean, I had to go back to the bigger generator. It's my cranking the flipping heat up at night. So
Yeah.
our demand spiked and the little generator won't keep up once we get above. It doesn't like getting above 90 kilowatts. And it's been hitting like 110, 123 at one
Wow.
time.
And
That's a mess.
there's really nobody there. I mean, it could
Yeah.
be.
That's what's weird, but you can look at the trends and tell by the when it's cold and then the time of the day and night too. Like from about 7 o'clock till 10 a.m. in the morning, it goes
Yeah.
up. So you can tell that it's related there. So hey, Craig, how are you?
Good, John. How you doing?
Oh, good, good. Thanks for joining today, Craig. The other guys should be on here shortly. Just
Okay.
waiting on them to join us, and we'll get Craig. All we have to do is just go through the normal stuff to for the chair, Alexa, to call a meeting to order, do a roll call, go over public participation, and then we'll get on with your discussion first, so you can get to your other
Okay.
commitment there. So
Appreciate it.
yeah, and certainly appreciate you taking the time to repeat this, too, and go back over. So uh, yeah, hopefully we'll get some things going there and moving forward there and start getting the RFP prepared
Okay.
to get that out too. So
I owe you an example of that. I apologize. I
okay,
forgot
yeah,
about
when you
that.
get time, if you'd send that, that would be
Yep.
yeah, that would be great. Love to look that over and get that to the rest of the board too. So
Okay.
that'll be awesome. But yeah, no, good deal. We'll get it going and get everything going. That's what I was just explaining to Gene. Our power demand has gone up higher this winter. It's weird. We have our lodge closed, so it's
Okay.
interesting. And we normally run a smaller generator, but we've exceeded its capacity. So it's time to run the big one a little bit,
Yeah.
And it's a weather extremes. You get hot, you run them, and cold type of deal. So um, I'm glad it hadn't been as cold, but I'm not a fan of winter. So
Neither am
yeah,
I.
I spent winters in northern Montana and
No.
in Wisconsin and North Dakota. So um,
I,
I've had my fill of them. Yeah.
yeah,
So
I have to go up to North Dakota in late January. Not
oh
my
yeah.
favorite destination this time of year.
Oh yeah. What part are you headed to?
Watford City.
Wofford City. Yeah, that's up above. I know that area. I lived in. I ran a little town there called Medora,
Okay.
and I think that's due north of there. That's where they were doing a lot of the energy stuff at
Yeah.
one
Oh
time,
yeah.
right?
There's a
Yeah,
lot of
yeah,
action up there, energy wise.
yeah.
A lot of drill.
The bigger town right above there is one I really know. I forgot the name of it, but
Williston.
um, yeah, Williston. Yeah. So it's around Williston, isn't it?
Just about an hour outside of Williston.
Okay. Yeah, I know that name. No, I lived in that part I lived in was the Badlands down at Medora was down in the southwest corner, near the Montana border near Webo, Montana.
Yep. Okay.
It was the most interesting part of North Dakota, but it was nice. So, hey, Alexa, I think you're muted, Alexa. I think you can unmute yourself whenever you get ready.
Hi,
How are you?
here I am. How is everyone? Is what I said.
Yeah, really good.
And Happy New Year to everyone.
Yep, yep. Same to you guys too. Well, Alexa, yeah, Craig does have a prior commitment, so he has less than an hour. So if we can expedite the formalities once we get going and then get to him,
Yeah,
he is first on the
yeah,
agenda. So
let's get to the tedious part first is,
good.
there is Amy. Hi, Amy. Are you, well, no, you're not driving. You're in the passenger seat, right?
No,
Good.
She's still driving. She's in the passenger seat driving by the looks of it.
Is Mike on?
I don't see him yet.
Okay, well, we can do the not essential bits without him. I haven't heard that he wasn't gonna be here.
No, the last I
Um,
heard, he said he could join.
Yeah, maybe somebody can shoot him an email or a text or something. We have a number for him.
Yeah, I could maybe. I don't have his. I don't think I have a phone number.
Yeah, let me
Hmm.
see if we can send him an email. Well, welcome everyone. Let's do this. Roll call of board members. Amy, are you here?
here,
And Alexa Wilson is here. We're still waiting for Mike to join us, but we do have a quorum, so we can proceed. Adoption of the agenda. I think it's beautiful the way it is. So if, unless Amy thinks otherwise, I make a motion to adopt the agenda.
I second the motion.
All in favor, say aye or wave.
I,
Aye. No, step one. Approval of the minutes. Did you have a chance to read through them, Amy?
yes, they look fine.
Yeah, same here. So I make a motion to approve the minutes.
I second.
All in favor, say aye.
I,
Okay, procedures for handling electronic participation, we can still do it according to Utah law, so we are, because given the fact that we are in lots of places that are not tickaboo, it's the only way we can make it work, so I hope we will be allowed to keep doing it this way. Greg, Woycheese, is that how you pronounce your last name?
That's correct.
Okay, Craig Woycheese is with Toth Associates, and I thank him for making time in his schedule to meet with us. We had a meeting with him, or I should say John and Mike had a meeting with him earlier where they went over how a rate study, a cost of service study works, and he's gonna enlighten us all so we can decide how we're gonna progress in this arena. So Craig, if you're ready,
Okay. Floor is mine.
it is yours. Oh, that's
Awesome.
Mike.
So
Let's wait for Mike
yeah.
to be fully present. Hi, Mike.
Hi, sorry, I got hung up, literally.
Yeah,
in the snow.
you just missed the boring part where we approved the agenda and all that exciting stuff. So we're now just getting to the meat of the meeting. So Mike Morlang, our third board member, has joined us. I just invited Craig to take the floor.
Okay, great.
All right. Well, so I'll for this meeting, what I'll do for you guys, I don't have any exhibits or a PowerPoint. It's gonna be more of me just informally talking to you about what we do, what a cost of service study is, and what the expected deliverables would be from a cost of service study. So in general, a cost of service study, if someone's doing a comprehensive study, they're gonna look at three pieces or three key areas for your system. The first area will be system-wide financial statistics. So basically looking at what your income statement is, looking at what margins that the district's making, and through that process, we call it a revenue requirement process. We'll suggest that there needs to be a rate adjustment or not for the overall system based on the health of its financial records. A lot of times folks will ask in these, so I'm trying to give you some points. Some folks, not everybody always asks this, but sometimes they'll ask for like a short-term financial forecast, maybe for 5 years, taking a look at past history and providing you some statistics of what we think, what basic inflation rates are going to be, what your costs are going to be each year thereafter. So you probably, more people ask for that now. It just depends on the client. I get more of that from the municipal side of things or the district side versus co-ops, but it may be handy to ask for something of that nature, which we've done plenty of times. So what that provides you is if you do the forecast past the 1 year, it gives you a sense if you don't need a rate adjustment right now, when you might need one, basically in the future would be the case. So you can do some sensitivity analysis, use different inflation rates for your expenses and sort of look when you might need to take a look at increasing your rates. And so that whole area, looking at the financials and stuff as such, is basically what we call the revenue requirement. So once we figure if we need to adjust our revenue requirement to cover all our costs, then we move on to what you call it as a cost of service study. It's really a cost of service analysis where I take a period of forecasted costs and allocate them to each of your rate classes. For what you guys don't have, you're unique in some ways. You have sort of a pay or a buy system where you buy at different points of what you expect to use. You give a discount. You don't have a lot of rate classes. So, I mean, basically, it's just one class of rates for the most part for your system. In this area of the study, you can investigate if you need to have a different rate for what you would call your seasonal residential, your seasonal commercial and such, and maybe look at differentiating rates. It may be worth doing that to see where you're at in comparative to each other, and also you can also look ove as Mike had pointed out to me, of most of your folks are seasonal, but you have some that are year round, to maybe look at those as a side item essentially on there. But the goal here would be to determine if you need different rates for different classes. You guys are not a large utility. You're mostly seasonal in nature. So it may come down to more residential versus commercial seasonal in reality. And then the last piece is rate design. You do that at the very end. Once you've done the cost service study, so you have a feel for what the revenue requirement is for each rate class that you determine based on your allocation. And then you try to design rates that are fair and equitable to all the rate payers within the class, basically. So that's really big picture what you do in a study. The requirements for data in a study, a lot of folks will want to have an idea on that. It's pretty financial intensive. So when you do a study, we're going to want to look at what the revenue and expense details are on your system for the test year. And if we ask for prior years, for those prior years to do our escalation factors or help determine our escalation factors for inflation. It's billing data intensive. So we need to know like the units billed for each class essentially and such on the system. Power is a unique situation for you guys because you don't buy firm power. You generate your own power. The key thing in this study is that we're going to have to allocate our generation in a certain manner or figure what our costs are, our generation. So if you're overall big picture, if your books split the cost out for the generation cost on your system, that's fine. We'll be able to get it directly off the ledger. If not, we'll have to do some high level allocation to determine what's generation costs versus distribution costs. That's really what it comes down to here, basically. And so I've dealt with, if, we've had it, we've done enough of these where I know where I can come up with fair breakdown between cost and the functions, I call it, to get us that starting point, essentially just based on past what I've dealt with many clients, basically. So if the books aren't quite what they call functionalized, meaning that everything's specific, we'd have to just come up with some allocation factors that way as well. And things. So it may very well, I haven't seen your books and such the way it may require some, engineering type estimates to make it, work the study, that it won't be a nice cookie cutter model that we'd already have something for, a little bit of a customization, which I've dealt with in various occasions where I've had to deal with things like that. That's part of just when you're hiring on experience of doing studies. It helps to have someone that does studies in the electric business, for a lot of them, just to have that technical knowledge to be able to help the study along if it's something that's you're starting off a blank page with. So, but I mean, other than that, they typically, it doesn't take this long, an hour. So when I say this, it takes me 90 to 120 days. That's because of current workload, that I don't want to like promise something in 30 days and not be able to reach, because I got 30 of these going on at one time at all different size and different levels type of thing. But I always typically say that as a timetable, basically on them.
Mm.
The cost, and you may not care about that today's meeting, but just to give you a sense, for a small district like you, it may be more time consuming than a larger client. It's hard to get, for a cost side of things, without seeing the data, it's a little bit difficult to know how long but I typically try to build stuff on a size deal, because budgets are always part of the issue in dealing with things. Probably for a new setup, I'm looking at, as long as I'm not traveling to up there for travel expenses, I'm probably looking at something between the 10 to 15 range, most likely from a cost standpoint, just off the cuff without seeing this stuff. That'd probably be my range, because you only have one class as it is of customers. So keep that in mind. So that's why most everything I do, even if I do like a real simple rate analysis, that as low as I've been is about 8-ish, basically. If you want a rule of thumb, that's me being very transparent on this and such. And it's because I'm, as you get more familiar with an area that's in like my neck of the woods, where I know their power supplier very well, and it's just a real small little town type of deal. But I don't like to be punitive, because you go to bigger firm stuff, and maybe someone is cheaper out there and dealing with stuff. But a lot of times they price it because just fixed costs for themselves are high enough that the project basically is that way and stuff, when I'm covering all our firm overhead and things, if you think of it that way. But I think that's a fair range to give you up front.
So would it, and there's probably, I'm not sure how that works in your surrounding. Would it just be one person like you working on it, or do you have like underlings to farm it out to?
Yeah, it stay in shop. I don't outsource anything. I have my own staff. I have I have basically 3 full-time people on my staff. One other's a CPA, and I'm a CPA. And so it's gonna be either a combination of all me, or a combination of myself and Lolly that would work on it, basically.
Yeah, so and if Amy or Mike, if you have another idea about it, I think our main question is about how to divide up the cost between the different rate classes, and maybe there's a question of defining rate classes in there, because in Techaboo I'm getting the impression that every customer in every class thinks they're holding the short end of the stick. No,
That's
and maybe that's true because it's like really expensive for everyone.
Yes.
So to some extent, everybody has reasons to complain, but it often comes with, I am paying too much and they over there don't pay enough, and I would be better off if I would just be able to do my own thing. And so that is the main reason, because I mean, our income stream and our expense streams are so small that it doesn't take a rocket scientist to figure out
Yeah.
how that balances out.
Yeah, no, I follow you.
So
It's
our main question is how to divvy things up between the different rate classes, and hopefully in such a way that it will increase the customer's confidence is that they're not being charged unfairly.
yep.
And so my main question is, what determines fair in this cost of service arena?
Well, it's sort of two-pronged what you asked. First of all, due fairness, you would be served by breaking them out in class to examine them. But you got to put them in a classification that makes sense for your system. So you're mainly seasonal, and you have residential and commercial seasonal. Is that correct? And then you might have some year round, but pretty minimum from my understanding. So basically, to me, that's your classes. I can tell you how a study is going to work out. Anybody that was full year round paying for electricity, for infrastructure, is going to yield a better return on your investment because they're there all year round. They're using your services you provide year round. The seasonal classes always typically, it's harder for them to pay their fair share unless their rates are higher, just in general. And when I look at seasonal, but what you do is, from an allocation standpoint, you just follow typical allocation procedures. If it's a cost that's related to serving the customer, like a meter, transformers, etc., you allocate it based on number of customers. Now, of course, you'd weight those customers differently if it's a commercial versus residential consumer, because they use a larger transformer size. The meter might be more costly. So that's how you go about dealing with what we call like customer cost, essentially, which is like your billing type costs and those costs related to that infrastructure. If I'm allocating based on, for energy, just strictly energy and your energy costs, it's typically done by an energy basis. Now, your system might be a little bit different in manner because you're not a firm supply, you're not getting firm supply from somewhere else. So you just have this generation component, your cost related to generation. The key, the one item that we have to see how we want to deal with when allocating to your customers, your classes, is what's the demand component of your plant? That's typically your interest and fixed type cost versus what's the variable component of your generation. Then that's allocated based on energy. The first one's harder to deal with because you have to estimate one's, basically their contribution to demand. And I don't know, and so everybody on the call understands, demand is like energy in a way, but it's not kilowatt hours, it's kilowatt hours for peak periods of time. That's all it is. It's an interval of kilowatt hours, whatever the peak is for the month. And energy is just basically your kilowatt hours is like your odometer on a car if you take a trip. It's like your monthly trip of total usage, basically. It's what spins on the meter, basically. But you probably don't collect demands on every customer on your system. That's one thing you probably don't do. So you're going to have to estimate demands in some way to allocate that portion. Or you simply allocate generation cost by energy and strictly go that route and make it simplistic. That's not necessarily always fair to commercial customers to allocate by energy, because they have a typically, while they're there seasonally, probably have a better load factor, meaning they use more energy efficiently and for their demand usage, basically, as that means. So it's a little maybe unfair to do it just strictly energy. But those are the type of things we have to look at when with the data that we get. And if we split these classes out and don't just have one class of rates, how are we going to divvy up the costs? And it's basically just follow what type of cost it is and use that as your allocation factor.
So
Customers
so
really-
so in our
customers-
situation, we have basically one really large commercial user and a few smaller residential, either seasonal or year round. That's kind of
So-
our customer base.
just the one large commercial and most.
Yeah, and if I were to guess, I would say that the commercial operation uses 2/3 of the power.
It'd be worth divvying the two classes and and allocating the fair mechanism to see. Because I mean, if someone told you just to do the one rate as it is or the one class as it is and not split them and allocate, you wouldn't get that confidence that you're talking about to say, okay, is there truly a subsidy here? How much is it? And if there is a subsidy, how much can you live with as a subsidy on it? You always got to keep in mind if commercial subsidizing the smaller users, if you lose commercial, then the subsidy goes away, then you're stuck with an issue where all the residential folks have to pick up the costs. I don't know the situation with your commercial customer, if there's any risk of that, but that's the risk if you have a large subsidy going, meaning the commercial customers paying more than their fair share on the study. That's a concern that you would try to look at in this type of study, in my opinion, to make sure that it's not so much that, you know, that it seems like they're enough in line from a practical standpoint. And when I say practicality, there's a lot of different ways that people put benchmarks on that. But the way, if you look at something on a return on investment or a return on their revenue, and there's in the standard deviation is over 10 to 15%, then you typically start looking at as maybe it's a subsidy that's too much. Just to give you some benchmarking the way I look at stuff. Because I'll look at their returns most likely on revenues to look at a cost service study. If I have enough plant data, I'll look at the return, the margin that each of the classes make as a percent of plant. That's what you typically do in the business of a commission type of, because you got good plant records. It just really depends on our plant records, how we look at the returns on these classes. But both methods work, Alexa, in terms of as a metric to determine what the subsidy is or non-subsidy, or how each of these what margin they're making to the system.
So there are like industry standards.
Yes. Yes.
That are not like etched in stone, but they do give a direction to the term fair.
A lot of my clients are, a lot of clients obviously I have are electric co-ops. I have to go on standards on it because I work in states that are regulated based on the regulated standards of doing cost of service studies. Everything down to municipal, you try to use the same standards and such. Sometimes you don't have the same information to be able to do it completely all the way to way you would do a co-op study. But the idea of a cost of service study is the same from that level all the way down to a municipality. There's differences in the way you guys operate and stuff, but it's an electric study. It's the same type of system.
Mike or Amy or John, anyone? Does anyone have any questions? Jean, if you have a question, that we'd be happy to entertain that as well.
Yeah, I just got a couple of questions. Well, at least one of them, by observing this, is that this is, to me, pretty ridiculous if you're doing the study when you have one organization producing the electricity, two users, one's taking 2/3, the other's taking 1/3. I think that it's fair that the members of the TUID district that are paying their fees are expecting our board of directors, which is the three of you, to have enough common sense to figure this out. To pay somebody $15,000 to $20,000 or 10 to 15, when we don't have that in the budget or anything else, to me, it just seems to be like a real luxury and something that you really don't need, because each one of you guys have enough business experience and knowledge to be able to handle that answer to that question. So, wow, I'm in awe that it's even being considered. That's my 2 cents.
No,
worth.
I started exactly where you are now. And I have since learned that I don't know nearly as much as I thought I did, that there are a lot of variables, and hearing Craig talk about all the things that I don't know kind of reinforces me. So I'm part, and I go back and forth between is this worth it and to pay for from my very limited resources, but then there is like it may be a good idea just to have a baseline to go off that is not coming from someone who has experience in looking at stuff like that. No,
It seems like a heck of a big expense that the district doesn't have the funds to do, nor actually, in my opinion, when I've been around now for a while and I own 10 lots, I've talked to now some homeowners, there's a need for. I don't think that anybody, this claim that the people, the commercial is getting the benefit from all of it. You guys can do an analysis. I've looked at the budget. I just saw what John sent out in the budget. Anybody that with half a knowledge and be able to read a balance sheet can read that and say, okay, we've got a problem, let's work it out, and where the sheets are. But if we lose that commercial player, just like he said, if we lose the commercial player, we're dead. It shuts us down as homeowners. And I don't think that a lot of us understood that. I understand now by looking at numbers and talking to people, but I don't think that this raising the issue that people think that we're unfairly being subsidizing the commercial user, that's crap. And I just think that what you're doing right now is, I think you got things to do with your time that are much better than this. And
okay.
it's funny. That's my 2 cents worth. I'm sorry if I took too much time.
No, I appreciate your comments. Thanks for that. Anyone else? Amy?
I'm good. Thank you, Jean, for your comments. Oh, excuse me, Ray would like to ask a question.
Okay.
Hey Alexa, how are you? Happy New Year, everybody.
Doing well. If you can ask your question while keeping your eyes on the road.
I can, yeah.
Good.
I actually have a couple questions if you don't mind, but
No,
one
go
of
ahead.
them, and John might be able to better elaborate, but on a rate study, are we able to dig into some of the rate classifications that currently exist that we don't quite? And John might be able to fill you in a little bit about that, but it's mostly we've noticed that there's some classifications, and we don't quite know how it's classified as one thing and then but kind of charged another. And we've been, John's been digging into that, especially with our billing system and stuff like that. But can a rate study help with that knowledge to understand why that is for us?
If I can speak to this, John, a little bit in general, if you don't mind.
Sure,
and I should have pointed this out, but it's a very good question. The one thing the study will do is I will ask for billing records and I'll verify billing records. So because I have to trust billing records for my allocation process. So if there's any discrepancy issues in how you're billing someone or what it is, it would be picked up in the study. That's the only area of the study that has sort of an audit procedure to it, because I have to rely on that billing data for the study. It's probably the most time consuming piece of everything as well. If you want to know why I'm at the 10,000 point, that's what it is, and such. But that's part of, I have to go through those records and look at them and verify the what do you put on your books as revenue makes sense of what I get from a billing standpoint.
Yeah, and just so you know, Craig, what Ray's referring to, like for the commercial customer, it's classified as a rate 13.
Mm-hmm.
But we go into our billing system, there is no rate 13. It's a rate 10. So we just don't have the history. 13
Interesting.
seems, yeah, it is that part is where we would run into having to dig and clarify. We just haven't found the records to clarify what 13 is built of because it's actually under a rate 10. So that's the
Interesting.
yeah, we need to try to find records, which we've been looking for, of what that consists of to help everybody out. That's what he's referring to there. So
Okay.
there probably would be some audit process. And
Yeah.
while I'm commenting too, the first thing that came to my mind too, and I don't know, this is maybe overthinking it, but we may get into where we have subclasses around here. And I'll give you an example of that. You know, we went with commercial and residential. Well, to me, within commercial, the commercial operation always also brings in year-round residents as employees. So there's a subclass with that, and then residential, there's some that rent their houses out for VRBO. So there's
Yeah.
sort of I could see that being a subclass as part-time residents, but with a commercial aspect too. So
Yes.
I could see any kind of classification, having some subclasses built within that too, due to our unique model and our location, our remoteness.
Yep. The one thing, and it's Gene, right, that had spoke up a bit ago about stuff. The one thing that he made a valid point, because you're smaller, and I'm not, I'm one of those people that tells you as it is as well, that in most even whatever I allocate for commercial, if it's 75% of your usage, most likely its costs are going to be pretty consistently around 75% of your costs. Keep in mind and stuff. So I mean, I'll run stuff where I break stuff out by customers and usage, but you're going to see a fairly close number of what the allocation is going to be, basically, because I'm dealing with such a small system. So I appreciate his point, because you sort of know that commercial customer is, you need 75% of that capacity you have for generation for them, and for the peak generation. They probably use 75, they probably use a large amount of usage. It may not be exactly 75%. And so you sort of have a feel going into one of these, the way it's going to look from a cost standpoint when you allocate the book costs to them, essentially. And so I mean, I'm not trying to hard sell you on something here, but that's why I shook my head when he was talking, because in reality, that's probably the way things would look on the system.
Mhm.
Okay. Go ahead, Ray. And may I ask a second question? Do you still have time?
Yes.
And thank you for all that. So, we're members of UAMPS, and they had, Alexa, correct me if I say this wrong, but the quick and dirty rate study that they did back in I want to say 2020 or 21.
Mm-hmm.
And besides the obvious, I mean, I know the difference between a luxury vehicle and a buy here, pay here vehicle, but so what would be the difference over trying to get the quick and dirty type rate study done through that organization that actually costs the district nothing versus what you're offering here?
So
I-
go.
I-
That wasn't
I
to me, was it? It was to Alexa.
Well, I think Greg misses the information about what the quick and dirty rate study. And I think they oversold it a little bit when they called it a rate study. It just ends up what they call it, equalized cost of energy. Basically, what they did was dividing the kilowatt hours sold by the cost.
Oh, yeah.
It's pretty
And-
much just your power produced versus power used and basically what we're doing now for our budgeting.
Yeah,
So
so that I think they oversold it a little bit when they called that a quick and dirty rate study. It was basically just a quick division of two numbers. And
Yeah.
it had a way to help us decide whether moving to solar up to a certain percentage would help or
Yes.
hurt. And that was kind of, it's like a very small spreadsheet.
Yeah, that's all they're because they're using kilowatt hours as their basis and the denominator for everything. And that's where you just get the simplified, here's my cost per unit type of deal.
Yeah.
And like I said, it's not the thing is when I'm talking to you guys, you're so small, like it's not how a study is done traditionally. The cost service study is like how I explained it. You break your costs into different buckets, whether it's generation versus distribution, and you allocate them slightly different, essentially. In reality, I do think you'll just, if you have a commercial customer that's that large on your system, it's probably gonna follow suit to what they're close to about their usage breakout compared to the residential in terms of a cost allocation. You just get into more fine-tuned details of what you guys don't do is like, should I have a fixed charge instead of just all volumetric? That's what you get out of a rate study to say, would you suggest this fixed charge instead of just having this energy rate? You get that out of rate design. Essentially, you get, like I said, the difference is they didn't look at your system in terms of billing standpoint, that does it all make sense the way it's billed right now type of deal. Like when I talked about reviewing the billing data. But that's why all these things do add up, because it's just not simply a back of the napkin calculation, basically. And I mean, we can do back of the napkin calculations as well and such, and do some stuff that way that's like, looking at stuff from certain items of interest. It's just not a full rate study.
So do you think that if we have the information from a rate study, if that would help us in determining to which extent moving to alternative energy generation would help?
It depends,
Would that put us in a better situation?
It all comes down to this, I think, in my mind, is do you want to charge your commercial customer a different type of rate structure that they might be able to benefit them better as far as their own controller load, basically. Instead of having just a kilowatt hour charge, do you need to charge them a demand charge? Basically, it would come down to something of that nature that would be something outside of their typical the rate structure you have right now. There's the only thing that because I think this comes down to my mind. You're seasonal for the most part. You have the Airbnb type things that has those houses be where they're more non-seasonal, where they're full year round. But it really comes down to this 3/4 of your load being commercial and determining if you need to charge them a different way or not. And if, based on what you guys said earlier, if you have my guess is that about the subsidy side of things, I'll tell you right now, my inclination would be that your commercial load probably subsidizes the rest of the system. More often than not, that statement holds true for me, any utility I look at.
Although there are people in the community that would swear up and down that it's the other way around.
They're incorrect if that commercial customer, when it's there, is using a lot of has a very good average usage, probably has a pretty good load factor. I mean, they're using a lot of power in relation to what you require for your peak plant. They're most likely more of an efficient user. And when it comes down to, if they're a more efficient user and they're paying the same rate as the residential customer, they're subsidizing the residential customer. I
Well,
mean,
the
I've
rate, the
done,
rates are a little different.
are they getting much of a discount on the energy charge? Is my question on there. If they have a kilowatt hour charge, I know you guys have the bracketed, like, or you go on the
Yeah,
step.
they pay a fixed amount for the first 330,000 kilowatt hour, and then anything after that does have a fairly low rate.
Okay. So you have put things in place where they do have some discount
Yeah,
beyond.
but only at the very back end, because the the first, if you just calculate straight kilowatt hour cost, the first one is like 80 cents per kilowatt hour.
Yes.
And after that, they get fairly low. So it's kind of hard to
But you
to
have
compare.
attempted to give them some discount on extra usage purchase versus if I was a standard residential customer, I'm paying like this flat 56, 58 cents, basically, is what I'm at. They might
Yeah.
be something lower on the, because the purchase that they're making basically
Mhm.
puts them like, maybe, let's say it's like 30 cents or something of that nature. So you do have a mechanism in place that gives them some volume discount.
Yes, after the first block, that's a fixed amount that includes a fixed
Yeah.
number of kilowatt hours.
I just couldn't remember how many blocks you guys had and stuff. I don't have it handy in front of me
Yeah.
and stuff. I remember looking at it a while back, but so you've tried from a rate standpoint to cure that and such, which is, if you're not, they are getting some discount, that's exactly what you're doing from a rate standpoint right now, is to say, here's this. The only thing is, it's like, and it's not, I don't see it as a necessity with someone your size, but typically commercial customers, what size load is this, Mike? Just to put me in, what type of demand am I looking for? Give me a ballpark. What's your KVA capacity that you serve them with transformer wise?
It is probably a 500 kVA.
So let's say that's oversized by 50% maybe, or I mean, we're
Yeah,
talking about 250 kW load.
yep.
And that's your big load. And basically everybody else, there's, your typical residential, which will run 7, 8 kW maybe at times. Essentially, maybe, yeah, I'd say 5 to 8 kW range. And so, see, the only thing you could do theoretically is charge them a demand charge, but that during their part, that's a more fair for a commercial customer, but you're only dealing with one. If your system's working, do they complain very much by having just a flat energy charge? Would be my question. Have they ever commented that we pay just strictly an energy charge?
I don't know. I don't think so. I haven't heard it, but that might just be because I'm fairly new to that
Yeah,
energy power
they're basically
concept.
the size of a Walmart from a load standpoint. From a KW standpoint,
Mhm.
some of the Walmarts around here, that's what I've seen on a monthly KW basis on them, on like the neighborhood markets or something of that nature. So they're basically that size. They're if you did the math, it takes so many residential customers to meet the same value you're getting from them in terms of sales, and you probably don't even have an equivalent situation there.
Mm.
So, I mean, that's the way you look at and stuff. So it's hard. I mean, I think you're trying to keep subsidy away from them a bit by having that declining purchase blocks. And so if I wouldn't change it unless you could come up with a rate that would be something that actually builds them a demand that's better and more fair to them in that nature. But if you're doing that, you're going to lower their rate and have to increase the seasonal rates. Anything we go back to the end of this is, if I say let's create a rate that's more beneficial to them. It can make it revenue neutral, but if they actually work, that it works for them to make it so they decrease their rates, it's gonna come at the detriment of the other side. Eventually,
Yeah,
you
I
gotta pay your
mean,
bills.
money has to come from
Yeah, so
somewhere.
you take from one, you gotta give to the other, basically.
Exactly.
And
Yeah.
so, and I'm not trying to not discount my study and stuff, I say this, but your system being so small, you have to think of the reasons you'd be benefit into going to full detail of a study. And so maybe on the positive side, you have a review of your billing data. That's a plus side, to spend the money on. As far as allocation side, it may be arguable that you can just use a simple methodology, just do it back of the napkin, say 75% of costs are here, blah, does that make sense type of thing. So I think for you guys, you just got to weigh whether the pressure from the community is so much that you have to do a formal study versus the fact that you're making money enough to cover your system right now and you're doing fine the rates that are established and you are offering that declining block on the large commercial to be more fair. The question
Well,
becomes,
if I had to make a prediction about an outcome for a study, I think if you objectively study the cost of the generation and everything that goes into it, nobody pays enough. Because I
well,
don't think our current financial situation is sustainable.
that's a separate,
Right now,
that's
we're
a,
just surviving, and was my hope with
Yeah.
with a lot of this conversation was, instead of surviving, how are we gonna get to the next step? So
Yeah.
that in X amount of years and the $90,000 generator rebuild comes up, we're all not going, what are we gonna do? So, we've got to set some sort of standard that's fair and equitable to everybody, that then the study provides an independent engineering voice, not just our board,
yeah,
and will lead us in a direction to where 10 years down the road, we're still there, and we're moving forward in a good way.
and what you say, Mike, I concur with. Another plus positive study is what you're talking about is like your overall system costs. At what point in time, if you're looking at your cost of having to deal with replacement of your generation and such, you got to plan for that in the horizon properly, that you're not caught where you don't have enough cash to deal with it at the point. You got to have a financial analysis, basically say what's our plan financially to deal with that.
Have a work plan.
Yep, exactly.
Well, Alexa, that goes.
Maybe, sorry,
Alexa?
John, go ahead.
I was going to say, Alexa, that goes back to your question and Mike too. When we do 10 years down the road, it's like driving a 72 Pinto in, 2024. The question is the model that we have now going to be sustainable 10 years just to go all diesel generation? So that goes back to your question, Alexa, are we going to be using the right model in 10 years from now, no matter what we do, do we look at alternative energy? I think that's what Alexa was alluding to, Craig. Does it somehow?
Yeah, that's a bit of a different analysis in nature. If you think about it, it's a high level financial analysis with some engineering to assume a load growth on your system or whatever. You need to look at assumptions and assuming, am I going to get enough money through my payers with the growth I'm getting to pay for what I need to upgrade it to?
Yeah.
So you have theoretics there. You got to determine what's the age of this current generator, what's its life expectancy left, what's our system look like right now, what do we project it to be at that point in time, and what margins are we making right now as a cash margin, be putting away towards that if we're going to finance some of that on our own.
Yeah, unfortunately, we missed that bus first time around, so that's even a bigger pickle because
It's
we're
a
already
little
to that.
different than the formal cost of service study I was talking about earlier. It's a different type of analysis. As Mike called it, sort of a work plan or an engineering analysis that falls in an engineering category to know what you're dealing with essentially from a cost standpoint in the next 10-year horizon.
Yeah.
work plans, when Mike uses that term, typically it's like a 5-year horizon at a co-op level. If you're talking about something further, you're talking more longer range planning is what we call
Alexa,
Mm-hmm.
in sitting back and observing this and listening to you, everything, you claimed this rate study was being done because you felt that there were homeowners that felt they were subsidizing the commercial. He just told us a few minutes ago that this study will end up maybe reducing the rate to the commercial and increasing it to the homeowners.
possibility.
And at the same time, you didn't answer the question, and maybe Ray can answer the question: is the commercial user complaining about paying too much and subsidizing us? That to me would be the question we'd want to know, because that is the key. They're paying 75% of the bill, and so it seems to me that you're walking on glass, worrying about the homeowners, when in reality it should be the way around. We should be worrying about how
Well,
to keep that.
that's where I started in the beginning, that everybody really feels that they're holding the short end of the stick.
I think you're hearing it you're hearing it not from everybody. I think I've been out talking to people, but not just the ones that live up there, but the ones that seasonally come in and out now. And I just every one of them asked that question now. They didn't understand. They don't know what's going on with how the 75-25 is being used. Once you talk to anybody that's has any business sense and you lay out to them what's happening, they say, bingo. I mean, I can name off 6 people that I've talked to. I'm down there every day, right? Or not every day, almost every weekend, working on my project, similar to what Mike's been doing. And it's mind-boggling to me that, I mean, you hear 2 different stories. There's a few people that stay down there that are just never going to be happy. They just want to complain. And there's a group of people that want to be down there because it's a beautiful place. We love the place, and we're not informed. And so, and I'll address that later on. But to me, this spending $10,000 to $15,000 to appease somebody that, best case scenario, you're going to increase their rates, is a waste of money.
So it's way more than appeasement, Mr. Bowles. It's engineering. It's what needs done to really find the value in each service that we provide service to make sure that we're charging everybody correctly. And it's probably not going to change a lot. And you know, if it was to a point where it needed to change a lot, that's when we can step in and say, hey, we're not going to do all that at once. We're going to do this, we're going to do that. We're going to make adjustments. But having that baseline that hasn't been done at Tickaboo is very needed, in my opinion.
But the expert just told us just the opposite. He just told you that he was doing a rate analysis on this to determine whether or not the commercial is paying their fair share and the other 25% aren't. So and he's told me, from what I heard from the summary, and I'm pretty good at memory on that, is that in his opinion, what would probably happen is that the commercial 75% user is probably going to be need to get a reduction because of the way that it's planned out. So to me, this board can figure that out. And Mike, I appreciate the fact that you are an owner down there and you're spending time and you have a desire to see this thing go through, and you spend a lot of time on the board and stuff. I admire that. But at the same time, I don't think that the homeowners and the people that are down there that really are the investors down there have a knowledge of what's going on.
But that's kind of a different subject. But we are not forgetting that when we order a study, that we're basically spending the customer's money,
our money,
and we will seriously consider what you said, because it's the thought is not unfamiliar to me. That was my initial response too. So we're just gonna digest all the information that we have, and then we're gonna make a decision in public.
The one thing I want to clarify is just one thing. That's my assumption based on not seeing any of the data, based on my experience in general on commercial. If Mike and I look at this, you get some data, and John and Mike get me data, and for whatever reason, we need to weight that generation even more so than simply kilowatt hours to the commercial, I could have a different story. but I don't have the data in front of me to know that for
Mm.
certain. This is
Yeah.
my generality in general when dealing with rates all through the country. There always seems to be a subsidy towards commercial, the paying more than residential. That's I generalized there, but I can't say that with 100% certainty to be the case this time. I just don't want to say that, then make it sound like it's
Mm.
always.
Mm.
Sure. Yeah.
Yeah.
And thanks, Gene, for your comments. I appreciate it.
Yes.
I went on mute. Thank you. Thank you. Okay. Thank you, Mike.
So Greg, it looks like it's almost time for your next
Yeah.
obligation.
I hope I didn't muddy the waters on you.
No,
Alexa.
no,
I didn't
it's,
do-
I think this is a very illuminating, discussion.
Be-
And I absolutely appreciate that you're willing to spend this time with us. Because the reality is that we can use every help we can get and information, and
Well, I just want to
speaking just for myself, I'm just making this up as I go along.
No, I just want to make sure you know what you're getting out of it and
Mhm.
stuff in the study. If you're spending that kind of money, I just want you to understand and make sure go back if you think you have to have a different scope to as far as a planning process. That's a little bit different animal and scope than a cost of service study in ways too.
Yeah.
And they go hand in hand, but there's things you got, I think, to think about. That's why, you know, I listen to anybody, Gene was a dissenting on it some. I think he has made some fair comments as a dissent and stuff and things. And I'm not trying to hard sell you. I'm just trying to figure out what your system is and what you're needing and trying to give you my thoughts on it. That's all I was trying to do today and such. Let you guys take some time to talk about it some more and just let me know if you need more information from me from my end and stuff, and I'll be happy to give it to you.
Yeah. And I appreciate your honesty.
Yep.
And the lack of the hard sell. That is very
No.
illuminating. I appreciate
No,
that.
I don't want to like have you do something you don't need to do, but there may be some there's based on some of the things we're talking about, there's value there too in things. I know I generalized, so I apologize. I did that, but that's just been in my experience, what I've seen from a commercial residential standpoint.
Yep.
Mm.
No,
Well-
I think there's value in it. Just, one more quick comment, Alexa's, since 2012, since the utility was formed, it's been in survival mode, really. It's just
Mhm.
been constant survival. And I do think there's value in looking at, how do we get past that survival mode and get to a point where, we can better prepare for the future and be a sustainable power utility and
Mhm.
water, sewer, and everything else we provide. And I think the only way to do that is to really look forward far enough to where we don't get caught, we don't have the unexpected costs that really hit everybody hard.
You could set up something where you, from a rate design standpoint, where you look at that horizon and incrementally increase your rates, not to have it all jump at once. Basically set like a rate plan up basically at the end. And if there's any little subsidies you want to take care of, you can sort of mitigate that over a lot longer horizon. Maybe you set up a 5-year rate plan or something of that nature. That's something you can do at the end of this type of thing. So there's some value there in a planning perspective as well.
Thank you.
Yep. Thank you
Yeah,
guys.
thank you
Appreciate
very
it.
much, Greg. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Craig.
Thank you.
So do we need to discuss this further? Or shall we just let this percolate a little bit?
Sell the trailer. Sell the trailer.
Is Ray saying something?
Um,
I was talking to the dog.
no,
Oh, okay.
it's okay.
Okay, so let's just let this percolate a little bit. And we'll get back, we'll think about it, talk about it, and bring this back in a future meeting.
Sounds good to me.
Yeah, I was hoping we'd have more public participation today, but obviously that we did not, so
Mm,
is what it is.
okay. Okay. Where are we? Oh, the next one is public comment. Yeah, we have 15 minutes, 3 minutes per speaker for anyone who wants to address any issues. That'll be Jean and Mr. 6659.
I have something that I'd kind of like to bring up.
Okay,
I've
go
been,
ahead, Jean.
I kind of, just to parallel more with what I had said earlier, is I've been working with Ray, and being down there again, spending more time, I hear so many negative things, and there's not negative being down there. It's just such a peaceful, beautiful place, and I don't think that we play on that enough. And I don't think that the people that own the place, a lot of places, kind of just come down seasonally or off and on, that they know how beautiful it is. They wouldn't have those properties, and so I think we need to get. I've been working with Ray a little bit to look at maybe this nonprofit Friends of Tikaboo to research and advance, better development down there and beautification projects. And I thought maybe it would form in a committee. I mean, the first time I went down there 2 years ago, I was going down for the Tikaboo ATV ride, the side-by-side ride. And my wife and I and family, I've got 7 kids, 21 grandkids. We went on to all these different rides all over Utah. I've been to probably 30 different ones over the last several years. And when I rolled in there in my coach and I felt like, man, what a, excuse my French, what a shithole. Because as I drove back into where the RVs were parking, I'm going like, man, this place is just, what a mess. And went on the ride, and after I went on the ride, I'm going, I've never been to a more beautiful place. I owned a Honda motorcycle franchise in the 80s, and we used to go down to Moab all the time. It reminds me so much of what Moab was back in the early 80s when we would go down there. The beauty, the ability to have just enjoy nature and everything else is there. And so I think that we need to play on that. And Moab is becoming a real mess. And same thing with St. George. I have a place in Washington where we used to be able to ride right out and go do things. It's just changing. And the more time I spend down there, the more I think, man, this is just a slice of heaven. And when I take people down there or I show them my pictures, they don't believe me. It's just like, wow. So I think that we ought to be able to promote it better, but at the same time, get owners together and say, let's clean the place up. Let's make this thing shine. I see what Mike's doing over there, and I look at that, and I'm jealous because he's got the skill level. I don't have it. I'm trying my hardest to clean up my 6 lots over there right now.
Anytime you need a hand, Gene, give me a call, buddy.
But I drive over to look and see what you're doing because I have an excavation client. He says I don't ever do with sand because it's impossible. But anyway, I think that the things that we're doing, I'm not doing it for resale. I'm not doing it to dating. I'm doing it for my family and for my legacy to here, because I think our grandchildren are never going to see the beauty that we saw unless we take active steps. And that's what I think we need to do. We need to promote it more. I don't know that we want the masses to be down there, but there's a lot of homes down there that are just shit shows. I mean, it's just terrible. The trailer doors open, all that kind of stuff. Let's do something. I mean, I took a few minutes with the mini excavator and the skid steer and helped 2 neighbors just clean up all the brush, put it in, we hauled it to the dump with my trailer. And that's what we need to do down there, maybe to beautify things and maybe bring it to attention. We don't want HOAs. We don't want restrictive covenants. I don't. That's the beauty of some of it. But at the same time, we have to have something to be able to enhance the value of our properties and the experience we're having down there. Mike, your kids, I think it was your kids who were riding the motorcycles in and out. They were so polite. They stopped, they waved, and they were doing exactly. I was thinking, I wish my grandkids are here to hang with them. And that is what we need to instill with people down there. And
Thanks,
it's
Gene.
there. It's there. I think we need to get a committee together and maybe form a better information level to the owners that are there that are kind of like absentee. There was a guy right across the street from me that I think he's from Heber City, or maybe it was Moab, that he and his dad owned some lots and stuff. And I was talking to him, and boy, he was really excited about, you know, getting involved in something like that. And we didn't have any formal plans because I just don't know how to go about it or who's really interested. But Mike, you should, because you've been down there so damn long.
Yeah, we ought to get something going. I agree with you, Gene. I think that'd be real good going in the future.
Yeah, thank you, Jean. We can, not sure, if it's TUID's job to clean
No.
up people's yards, but.
No, but it's
I do
the overall
appreciate
picture.
your passion for,
Yeah.
and we are taking, our job of, from providing power and other services to the residents so they can do beautiful things seriously. So thank you
Or
for
we
your
can
comments.
support you, make sure we have enough funding to make sure this happens. I mean, I like I told everybody, I've represented in our law practice, HOAs and other places. And when they had bad roof collapses and things like that, there were special assessments that had to be made. And that's one of the things that's got to be looked at. Sometimes they'll generators collapse rather than shut the whole thing down. It's going to have to be an assessment. That's got to be talked about someday.
Yeah,
But that's another subject.
okay, we will continue this this discussion, and if you want to share your ideas offline with any of us, we invite you to reach out. And thank you. Mr. 6659, the only other possible candidate for public comment, and if I do not hear anything, then I am closing the public comment period. And move on to, God, I'm old. The board discussion and follow up on the rate study and the RFP process. It's kind of out of order. I think we had decided to discuss it at a later time, and I think we all agree that if we decide to move forward with the rate study, that we have to go through all the mandated procurement steps that include an RFP.
Yep.
No, does anybody want to say anything else about that at this time? If not, then we will move on to number 9, the proposed fuel surcharge. I have learned a lot about all things that need to happen before you can change the rates. I had sent some stuff to the Public Service Commission that they summarily rejected because there was a whole bunch of stuff that we hadn't done. But the good thing is that they did tell us exactly what to do. So John has been doing, and Connie have been doing a lot of work doing all the stuff that need to be done. I don't know if you want to go through some of the notice and requirements that we skipped last time around. John?
You mean just what the PSC is asking for, Alexa?
Yeah, if you can just give a quick summary what you have done in that regard.
It seems like a lot, as I mentioned to you guys yesterday. Part of me looks at that and sees that any changes would be April before they would be able to go into effect. I mean, because it looks redundant about noticing people sort of before, during, and after any hearings and meetings and changes. So I just have to clarify that with those guys and see what that translates to. But other than that, it's just going back to our first discussions about the rate changes and, sending out, obviously, the notices on the public website, send out some emails, via the customer email list to people talking about. And of course, we've discussed it in our meetings here, and then we put ads in the, the public newspaper, the Garfield Examiner, I think is the name of it too, for the rate change along with the budget too, the same principle there too. So notification wise, we've done all that. I think the mechanics that are left are to, talk about it, do it, then advertise the changes going into effect. And of course, we've had public comment about it too, and then, welcome people to come by the office for any input. And one person has, several times. So we've done all that as far as seeking the public input, on items, related to it.
Yeah, I have learned that there are, and that is kind of a mind shift for me, and that kind of goes with something that Jean said, that there are a lot of customers from whom we never hear, and that the assumption that the people that we do hear from represent all the people that we do not hear from, and that these meetings, public as they are the main vehicle of communicating with the people that just paid our bills and lived our lives, is not a correct assumption. So that caused what I think is a good mind shift in my brain. And apparently the Public Service Commission makes a distinction between customers and the public. So that other than the customers, the general public needs to be informed too. And that kind of was a new thought for me as well. So
Yeah, that's probably some of my confusion because I see them as one and the same around here. You're either, if you're public here, you generally are a customer,
right.
unless you break down and get stranded here.
Yeah.
But that's probably
Or why would anyone who's not a customer or be even interested? But I guess that doesn't really matter.
Yeah, no, yeah, no,
There
I
are
haven't used that.
notice requirements to the public and other notice requirements to the customers, and
Yeah.
so
Oh, and
I
that's part of
feel
the Garfield Examiner, the public, if they see that as interesting and
right.
tantalizing, they have the ability to read about it in the paper too. So,
Yeah.
covered.
So that is all a good thing. So our next meeting, February 7, we're gonna make a final present. Oh, the other thing that we did is gather the final numbers for 2023 in terms of usage and oil purchases, and to do a final check that that the way we calculated the surcharge was valid based on the most recent usage numbers, and they haven't given us any reason to make any changes. So that was all that happened on my end, on John's end. Anybody else have any adventures in fuel surcharge land? Anybody feels we have to discuss anymore? If not, then we can move on to the next issue, the board reports. I made a discovery yesterday that I like to report on. I was looking through all the information that we got from UAMS about grant opportunity. And what I found out is that in addition to grants to build things, there are also grants for what they call technical assistance. And the barrier and part of what that does is offer technical assistance for people that don't quite know what to do yet. Like I was looking, that was my little hiccup just now. I'm trying to look to find my text for that. Because they have a book. The federal government made a book that is called Federal Energy Funding for Rural and Remote Areas. And it's a large PDF that I cannot find right now. But it describes what kind of, oh, here, I have it right here. Technical assistance programs, I had it like all set up so I wouldn't have to look for it, and then I forgot I did that. It's is relevant if your technical assistance programs are relevant if your community has not yet created an energy plan or identified specific energy projects, has specific questions about technology options, financing, and want expert help, would benefit from external support to facilitate conversations and potential partnerships and build consensus between stakeholders. Does not have the staff capacity to figure out the details involved in making a project happen. So I think that's us. So I think our first step, rather than immediately jumping into a application for a grant for something specific, we can ask for assistance in figuring out exactly what we need. This is all by renewable energy. One of the grants is from the National Renewable Energy something. Anyway, there are grants for help, federal grants for helping us figure out what we need. And I'm proposing that we just poke around in that a little bit and see if we can, rather than depending on people trying to sell us something, to tell us what we need, and then leave it up to us to figure out which part is good salesmanship and which part is truth. We may have an opportunity to get some help in doing that by people that have no other interest than to help us. And many of these services are free. So I'd like, maybe this is a question for Mike and Amy, most support in poking around there a little bit and see if that's a good way to go. I'll share the materials after we're done with the meeting. It was just yesterday, 6:30 when the snowstorm was about to happen, I figured I was reading that and I haven't had a chance to look at it any closer, but I would like to do that if you guys can support that.
Absolutely. It's a great idea.
Good. I don't think I have anything else to report on. Rate changes and the technical assistance for my updates for the month. Mike, Amy?
Nothing new with me.
Amy, do you have anything to report for this month?
I don't. I do think that we need to get that mobile home listed for sale or rent sooner than later. I think we should go ahead and do that, especially if we're going to have to pay for this rate study.
Yeah, I can't remember exactly when we talked about that. Somewhere in fall, last time we talked about, and we decided to do a dual marketing campaign, like market it for sale and for rent, and see what shakes loose, and make a decision based on that. Do we still all support that approach? Because spring is a good time to do that. Mike?
What's that?
Do you still support that approach of the dual marketing that we decided on in fall?
Yeah. Yeah, I still support that approach, and I would support putting it on the next agenda and we can discuss it further.
Okay. Yeah, and I think spring is a good time to do that. That's when people start thinking about being out in the desert again. So thanks for bringing that up, Amy.
Sure. Yeah, I believe that was last August. We had a thorough discussion of it and came to that conclusion.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah, so maybe John, if you can kind of write up like a marketing plan. I know that's a big word for what probably will fit on half a page if you use double spacing. But there's something that just describes exactly what we plan on doing in terms of marketing.
Okay.
The trailer, that'd be good. And that one lot up on the north end. Is it 48? Is that the one that we still have?
I think so. Sounds like it.
Yeah. Okay. General manager and management team report. John and Ray. That's you guys.
Yeah, I can give you guys some updates and let Ray go if that works for you guys.
Works for me.
Most relevant is we had a couple of brownouts this morning at around 4 a.m. and 6:10. And the reason those took place is that actually the MQ had reached its capacity and it was hiccuping and the cat's taken over, which is interesting because I've been watching it and we have higher loads this year. They're definitely related to the cold. You can tell they correlate and they start about when the sun goes down, about 5 o'clock at night, and they usually run through 10 a.m. in the morning. And I went up there and took data logger readings this morning, and we had a spike in demand at 123 kilowatts at some point this morning, and that's above the max for the MQ. It likes to be, 50 to 90 range because it's 120 max output machine. The 150 name is misleading. So the switch did its job. We just have to be careful. And I think we're going to run the C9 a while it's colder because we don't want to continually stress that MQ. That's part of what happened to the old one, that load. But it's odd. Yeah, I mean, because all the other numbers are in line where you look at your like your leading and lagging and your KVAs and just your volts and amps. They're not out of whack. So I don't think it's anything to do with distribution. Although that always worries me. Just a demand. Yeah, it's up. And as it gets colder, which this next week is going to be cold, then I would expect it to stay the same. But you can look at the timestamp and the dates and the weather and put them all together and correlate that somebody's cranking up the heat, So
There's a lot of heat electric.
I think it's mixed. I've heard of people having wood, pellet stove, but they do have an electrical component, on the conveyor belt for pellets and items. So, and some people have propane, but man, somebody's cranking it. Yes, it's a lot of demand.
I know
it's high.
all of the commercial is shut down right now. So
Yeah,
it's not any of the commercial properties.
Yeah, that's what's even odder, Yeah, no,
We're
it's
not using more
it's
power.
high. So yeah, somebody's really cranking in those demands. Yeah, they've even like this morning when I was live, we were seeing demand run between 97 and 103 kilowatts. So that's high for us. Compared traditionally in the a couple of years ago, it would hit 90 as a peak. Going back when I saw through, but we're topping 30% above previous 2 years. So, and again, with the other numbers looking like they're in line, it doesn't look like distribution. What I mean by that, I'm always worried about our transformers. As we talk about what we need for the future, distribution comes into play because there's a transformer the other day. It's leaking, that's what cools them. It's like, oh man. So yeah, I mean, we financially, we definitely, again, we've got to be prepared for disaster, but we'll run the C9 for now. And again, at lower loads, it does consume more fuel than the NQ, but it's by a couple gallons an hour. You know, and again, it depends on the 9 can drop as low as 5 gallons an hour, which is pretty darn good when it gets to around 50 to 60 kilowatt demands. This morning it was about 7 gallons per hour because the demand was higher and fluctuating too. So yeah, it's odd, but it's definitely there in the readings, you know, there. So just to let you guys know that. I've been talking to that guy Jeff Alexa. I know we met with him once, and he's going to get some pricing on the microgrid.
Mhm.
I'll get you guys until we get something more substantial. You know, there's nothing to really talk about. We just talked about potential PPA. So that would be interesting if somebody's actually willing to
Yeah,
finance a microgrid in here.
yeah,
Uh,
would be
it's
interesting.
normal technology. It has to do with you know, typical with the batteries and generators and steam turbines. Um, and it does produce, you know, thermal heat that can be used as exchange for cold or hot water. And they actually have models of it working at BYU right now too. So it is something, you know, it's
Oh,
technology.
really?
Yeah, it's normal technology and in use, but we'll see what they come up with, you know, there. Let's see what else I got here. Yeah, I think that's, you know, mostly it. We just been, you know, we got the year-end water readings done and working on the kilowatt overages now for this next billing cycle, but all that's done, you know, done there, which is good. Anytime you do something new,
Mm.
it's an experience, but it
So,
wasn't.
so did the announcement of the rate increase make it on to the December billing?
Uh, we're limited to what we can write in there, which is about one
Uh-huh.
sentence. So what did make it
Uh-huh.
on there was our February 7th meeting discussing it.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Okay,
So, and
that
then again,
sounds
we
good.
sent out the emails that were more detailed, you know, that
Yeah.
talked about it too. And
Mm.
I'll send out another email before the meeting again.
Mm.
Probably timing wise, it's best to do it a week before, or else people kind of forget about it. But
Mm.
yeah, the
Do
notice,
most customers have an email address on file?
yes, the majority of them do.
Mm.
Yeah, no, and I would love to see us even go paperless one day you know, as we talk about money, that's a way to save time and money too, is, you know,
Yeah.
printing supplies, but that's, you know, that's
Yeah.
a minor detail of, you know, compared to the larger things for that save money. Um, but yeah, that notice did make it out. We'll do the email. That'll, you know, be more, I want to hear people's, you know, input on it, you know, from there. I think a lot of it is self-evident, but you know, we'll see there. So, but that's basically it for me. Yeah, there's really never a
Mm.
dull moment, you know, between again and now we're cycling again for you know, year-end report to do from the state. Um, I would like to look at a CPA for the future. We pay a lot of money for the one we have now. I'm not sure that it's
Yeah.
a cost to value ratio of what we're paying. And we've
Yeah,
taken
I'm not sure why we're paying $12,000 a year for somebody to do our
uh,
very minimal bookkeeping.
yeah, I agree. And for our size of district, it should be a lot less money. And we've taken over a lot of the reporting ourselves that we report to the state.
Mm.
You know, so that's something I'll recommend, try to look around, but we just don't really get our money's worth. And then our
Mm.
contact is out for a while, and we just haven't had contact with a new one, and there wasn't anything formal introduction.
Yeah,
So I'd like to look at that.
maybe it's not a bad idea to float an RFP for that as well.
I would suggest
Mhm.
that.
There are a lot
That
of accounting firms out there
yeah, yeah,
and should be able to serve our needs just fine
yeah.
for
I
a
think they
lot
could do
less
it for
money.
less money, and I'd also like to eventually have access to QuickBooks too, you know, which they have, but we don't have access to it.
Yeah, that's weird. You should
Yeah,
at least have access to your own accounting.
yeah, that's an odd position
Yeah.
to be in.
I mean,
I agree.
it's
So
yours.
I know, yeah, no, I agree. Well, and you can get different versions and you can pay for it. It's not really that expensive. I think what it's called, I think desktop and enterprise.
Yeah.
It's been a while, but one allows anybody to log in, versus the other type of deal. So, and I'm sure, I mean, to me, the records belong to us, so that could be transferred. I would hope that would be TUID's property. But that's something to look
Yeah.
into that could save money. We're looking at every area, that we can to save that, doesn't jeopardize any service or anything. And that would be an area that would qualify for that.
Oh, I have another question. It's maybe not the platform to discuss this at length, but I made a rash promise for the board to review the bank statement in response to the audit.
Okay.
So, I mean, you can get me copies of the 2023 bank statements that I can just
Oh yeah, sure.
fulfill that promise. And
Yeah, we
I
can.
think that it's a requirement too, that at least every 3 months, somebody from the board looks at the bank statement, and I can't remember where that requirement came from.
They are. It's just
Um,
like an audit committee. And then we have year end where, and I think I can do this, which is pretty simple. It's a year end deposits and investments reports. Obviously the investments are zero, so that's easy
Yeah.
enough there. Deposits just goes back over what we deposited in the account and putting in.
mm,
But I think I can do that. We got instructions on how to do it, kind of from the state, so that should be easy enough too. But yeah, we can just pull those statements for the
Yeah, just
entire
so
12
I can
months.
just
Yeah.
go over it and just and if you can send that to Mike and Amy as well,
Certainly.
especially
Oh, yeah.
Mike, since he's the treasurer.
Yeah, we can pull those. That should be easy to pull those, all 12 in PDFs and
Yeah,
and go over them. So
yeah, that'd be cool.
good deal. No, we can do that. So that'll be
Mm,
easy enough there. So we'll put that on the list to do there.
yeah.
But that's pretty much it for me. No, there's never a dull moment. So
Mhm.
that's we're still.
Ray, do you have anything to add?
Alexa, thanks. The only thing I could intelligently report on is the beaches of South Florida right now. So you probably don't want to hear about that, but no, I'm all
No, we
good.
don't. We do not want to hear about that. We'd just be too jealous. Did you
So
drive
no,
all the way
I don't.
there?
We did. Yeah, we did.
Wow,
And
that's a long drive.
it was nice. It was 70 fluffy
Yeah.
beaches. It was beautiful.
See, you
But
just can't resist. You just have to make us jealous.
I have to rely on John. Him and Connie held the fort down while we were gone,
Yeah.
and I really don't have anything to add.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm sure it was in good hands with John and Connie.
So
Okay, I think that concludes our agenda. Only thing left is to confirm the meeting date and February 7 at do we have to do that at 6 o'clock? You probably do have
Yeah.
to do that at 6 o'clock, so
we do.
and we'll have a public hearing for the rate change. And I would entertain a motion to adjourn.
Like to motion to adjourn the meeting.
Full second.
Everybody in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Okay, well, thank you
Yeah.
guys.
All right, you guys have a good one.
Appreciate your hard work, and we'll do it again soon.
All right,
And
thank you
Happy
guys.
New Year.
Same to you guys.
Okay, bye-bye.